pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, well, we'll start out tonight with an approval of the agenda and minutes. We actually need to, I'm going to stop, we need to amend the official posted agenda because we are approving minutes from February 7th, 2022 and February 14th, 2022. I believe the one that was officially posted says January 24th. So can I get a motion to approve the amended agenda and the minutes?
I'll second the motion to amend the agenda.
Yep, start there. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, amended agenda is approved.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving on to the minutes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from February 7th and February 14th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and the minutes from February 7th and 14th have been approved. I'm going to skip over school committee chairperson comments for this evening and move on to student comments. We have some visitors from Memorial Elementary School with us here tonight, so welcome to everybody.
Thank you for having us. I have Mr. David Heath, who is our music teacher at Memorial, and there's 7 of you, 8 of you, 8 fourth graders from Senior Inspector's 4th grade with us. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Heath.
Thank you so much for having me tonight. I'm really excited to show you some of the hard work we've been doing in the music room. I'm hoping I'll give you a brief overview of the experiences a student has from pre-K all the way up to 4th grade at Memorial School. Yes. Our youngest students, starting from pre-K up till about 2nd grade, participate in a curriculum called First Steps in Music. This was developed by a music education theorist named John Feyerabend, and the goal of the program is to create students who are tuneful, beatful, and artful. Tuneful meaning they can sing in tune alone with others, beatful meaning they can feel the small and big beats in music, and artful meaning they're emotionally attached to music. Proponents of the Feyerabend approach, myself included, kind of teach with a 30-year plan in mind. We think that a 30-year-old person should be able to sing happy birthday without being embarrassed, or should dance at their wedding and enjoy doing it. They should enjoy going to concerts and experiencing music together that way. And while 30 sounds like a long ways away from a preschooler or a kindergartner, the research indicates that this is the time where we really need to be developing those skills and increasing musical aptitude. So with that in mind, each time a preschooler, kindergartner, 1st grader comes to music, we have an 8-step workout, which involves pitch exploration, like warming up our voices, song fragments where students echo with adults, simple songs, small, short, 3-note songs that students first learn in a group and then learn to sing by themselves, arioso, which is kind of improvised, child-created tunes, and a lot of it's movement-based as well, where we do movement exploration, which is a guided improvisation, movement for form and expression, where students move to music and learn about form kinesthetically, moving to the beat, and then we end every lesson with what we call a song tale, or learning to listen to a story through music. So in this video, we're gonna see some students singing in echo songs. A big part of the First Steps in Music program is developing independence. So I almost never sing with the students. They usually listen to adults and then sing. And we do that through echo songs where they'll repeat after me, and when they're ready, they'll actually repeat after me by themselves. So we'll see that in this video, and you'll also see my student teacher. So if you're seeing someone else teach, that's not me. I have a student teacher from Providence College right now. So here we go.
Where the water runs from, back to New York, I dare not go. Oh, my, it's your mile.
There's just an example of how students are almost never singing with me. It's always an echoed thing, and then they learn to sing independently by themselves. We do a similar approach through music. This next video, we'll see movement with form and expression. So students performing a finger play where they have to move to the music, a circle game where they have to do different actions based on what's happening in the song, and a choreographed music, a choreographed dance rather, to some classical music.
Here's a pastoral line, and here's a high chord music. Here's a whole more route. And here's
About halfway through second grade, students graduate from First Steps in Music, and we kind of move to our upper grade curriculum. Part of the cornerstone of that curriculum is a program called Conversational Solfege, and that's our music literacy component, where students are learning to read music. And we approach that in the same way that students learn to speak and read their native language. We don't show them the notation first. It's a sound before sight program, where they learn syllables for notes such as mi, re, do, or rhythmic syllables such as do's and do days. And first they just kind of repeat them, and then we see if they can translate them and hear them and translate the sound of the syllables. And then when they can do that, then we let them see what it looks like. So in this video, you'll see students just repeating some patterns, decoding or translating some patterns, both melodic and rhythmic, and then also kind of the final product where they're reading music by themselves. Conversational solfege is kind of one aspect of what we consider a 3D musical education. That includes music literacy, learning about music, and just what we call doing music, making music together for the sake of making music. Slide ahead. There we go, again, if you don't mind. In terms of learning about music, we have a Musician of the Month curriculum, where each month we focus on a composer or a performer, and we kind of do an in-depth dive on that person, which allows students to learn a lot about the styles they play, the time periods they performed in, and just their style of music. And then the rest is just doing music, the fun stuff. We do a lot of different things. In second grade, we kind of start a formal introduction into instruments with rhythm sticks and drums, leading on to Orff instruments like xylophones and glockenspiels. We do a lot of circle games and folk dances, and then a big portion of it is ukulele. So in this video, you'll see some folks playing Orff instruments and singing, and you'll see some third graders kind of on their very first ukulele playing.
jump
That was like ukulele day one. We start with open string songs, really basic, just trying to get the technique of how to hold the instrument and how to play the instrument. And then we learn more chords, and the more chords we learn, the more songs we can play. And I have some lovely friends that have joined us tonight. We have Axel, McKinley, Alice, Lily H, Max, Lily S, Eliana and Emmett, and they're gonna play a few songs for you tonight. So we're just gonna move some things, and we'll get ready to play. Now, I love to teach ukulele. It unintentionally replaced recorder. And there's a lot of ukuleles kind of having a moment in music education, and I love it because it's super fun to play. It's great for students to play and sing along to because it's in their octave, their register when singing. And also, I just think, we talk about that 30-year plan, and I think that people are a lot more likely to tote around a ukulele to their friend's weekend or bring a guitar to a campfire than they are to bring other instruments that will remain unmentioned. So with that in mind, we're going to play a couple pop tunes, and if you know the words and are feeling so inclined and would like to sing, I won't stop you.
Can everybody see back there? Everybody can see. All right.
So you can see where we get from day one to halfway through fourth grade, or a little bit over halfway. But so we're excited that we still even have further to go, right? I'm excited. I hope they are too. Just one other thing to touch upon about music at Memorial School is fourth grade chorus. Fourth graders have the option to join chorus if they'd like. Right now we have about 60 students in chorus. We meet every other week just because of spacing restrictions. And I just have a short clip from our concert on February 8th of one of my favorite tunes, the Beatles' Here Comes the Sun.
It's
That's all I got. So. For inviting me, and our awesome kids for coming out on a school night. Thank you. And our parents for bringing them. And thank you to you all for listening to me. Thanks so much. Oh, yes.
What's the hardest part of learning ukulele?
Your fingers hurt.
Any other answers?
I think learning new chords are
Yeah,
kind
learning
of
new
tricky.
chords.
G.
Like G. No, F. No, F is fine. G is hard.
G is hard.
It's like your fingers are in a pretzel. Sometimes hard to like move strings. Like
Yeah,
fingers
when you're moving strings back and forth during a song.
Yeah. We get used to it. Thank you again.
Yeah, they come out to do some video. They're here in school. In my school? Like which one? That was the hardest part. There we go. But if you can sing, what's the big deal?
I know. But the advantage of the singers. That's why I makes the sound for me. Are you saying the singers aren't in tune?
You don't know.
It's the vocalist versus the instrumentalist.
I would say that I've worked with plenty of singers who are not.
Alright, that was fun. Okay, moving on to our student school committee representatives. We've got Dia and Michael for comments.
Thank you. Yeah, so unfortunately, I don't have a ukulele with me. You have one?
No, I can't follow that.
Yeah. But I would like to talk about two things. So the MASC conference that Dia and I attended 2 weeks ago, this was just such a great opportunity, and it was just such a great opportunity to meet all different kinds of people from all over Massachusetts who share a similar thing that Dia and I do, which is being on the school committee. There were representatives from Lee to Bill Ricca to Cambridge, and they all went there to learn how to best maximize their term as student representative, which the best advice I heard was to just get yourself out there, get out of your comfort zone, sit next to people you don't usually sit next to, ask questions. This is the best way to represent everyone. We have all the schools to represent. We're just really getting out there, gain confidence.
And adding on to that, during the conference we had different corner sessions. So these were there were 4 corners, and basically you could go to anyone. All of those different corners had different workshops.
Yeah.
And you could go ahead and do them that interested. And there was one for curriculum.
Yeah, and then communication too.
And those teaching it for me, sit with a group of people that are interested in that and kind of just talk, about our district and how we can help, solve at the school level and the district level and how we can help as well. I think that was really lovely experience.
Yeah, definitely an invaluable experience. I really enjoyed going. Yeah. And just the other thing was the Model UN team is going to be traveling to Bridgewater State this weekend, Saturday, March 5th, to compete in the Boston's Academic World Quest, which is it's like a trivia game a trivia-like game to test their knowledge on various current events, geography, stuff like that. And World Boston is an NGO that deals with international affairs, international affairs, stuff like that. And the winning team will be given a free trip to Washington, D.C., where they will then compete in the national championship. So best of luck to them. And then just additionally, one more Model UN related comment. They've recently been in touch with the Irish consulate to try and schedule a time where either the consulate can come to Nipmuc and meet with the Model UN group to come up with various ideas, ask questions, or they could take a field trip to Boston to meet them at the consulate, which is really exciting. That's all I got. Yeah.
And I can just add one more thing. I want to talk about the Inspired Learning Day that is taking place on March 17th. And it's moving it, but I think hopefully you can do it on March 17th now. And we haven't done this in, I think, the past 2 years, I'm pretty sure. And it's like a full-day event where students can participate in like different workshops that interest them. And they're like student-led, teacher-led, and community-led. And we're excited.
Yeah, just to add to that, actually, I know in the music program there will be a piano workshop. So professional concert pianists will be joining us, and there it'll be, like I said, a workshop. So students who play the piano can kind of have a free 45-minute lesson with the concert pianist, which is super exciting. Yeah. And then towards the end, they'll actually perform for us, which is very cool. So, thanks for giving my time.
Very cool.
So I have a question actually for you guys. After attending the MAPS conference, did you two come out with any action items or ideas that you have in your head now about how to improve your experience on this committee? Any ideas that we might be able to benefit from?
We actually did. We've been in touch with Dr. Cohen. We're actually meeting this Thursday after school to talk about we had a few things.
We found a lot of different ways that we could like connect with students, but then also present it to the committee in a way that, we like the bridge between both of them.
Right.
And we found out a lot of different ways that we come up with that.
Yeah.
So there were also like 2 representatives over there that like presented tips and tricks that they have used in order to connect that. So
Right. Like how how to properly conduct surveys and how to get the most participation out of surveys. And also what I thought was really interesting were school visits and that idea of we heard student representatives say that their entire school committee actually goes to each school a certain time of the year to kind of see what's going on, communicate with the students. So we thought that was an interesting idea, whether it's the whole school committee or just student representatives give that input.
Cool. Sure.
Thanks, guys.
I think it's a big update.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to move on to community comments. Want to quickly review our school policy for public comment at a school committee meeting. We're going to devote no more than 15 minutes to public comment, or community comment tonight. Anyone choosing to speak before the committee should identify themselves by name and address. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. No person will speak more than once. Any comments longer than 3 minutes may be presented in writing to the committee for our review afterwards. That being said, do we have any community comments?
I think there are community comments that are creating. I don't know if your break reached a resolution on following the mask policy or not yet. So. Just check.
Sure, just communicate out there that this is where we are in our meeting.
There's one hand raised on Zoom as well.
Okay.
So that
Sam, in the interest of time, while they're working on that, why don't we hear from the hand raised on Zoom?
Okay. Jeremy Miller, you are permitted to talk as of now.
Can you please speak up? Nobody can hear you hardly.
All right, so we do have community members who want to speak, but they insist on not wearing masks. So I would like to make a motion.
We're hearing from Jeremy.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Miller. Could you try for me one more time? I think I had the volume down. My apologies.
I'm just asking if you could please speak up because we cannot hear you on the Zoom.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay.
you know,
May I continue?
yeah, I wonder if this.
Yes.
All right, so we have a number of parents outside who are not masked. They're breaking policy currently. However, right now, I don't see any danger that they're holding, so I'm going to make a motion. We can vote on that as we see fit, all right? I'm going to make a motion that we allow this break in mask policy in order to hear these parents during community comments for this next 15-minute period. That's my motion. I'll second it. We can vote on it. Okay, and I'll go out and notify them.
Okay.
I'm all right. They told me what would happen, so I'll make it happen. I was on games like efficient.
This is not about,
She's up. She's great.
Yeah, once I do the languages. I mean, if there's no one present for comments, I suppose we could, we can move on. Okay. Now-
Last call for community comments.
I have one hand raised on Zoom.
Okay.
So Christine Losciapo, if you could state your name and where you are from for the record.
Hi. Hold on, I'm sorry. Let me get my camera on so you can see me. It's Christine Loschiavo. I'm from Upton. I have a junior at the school. I can't seem to turn on my camera though, and I don't know why. Can you see me? You can't see me, right?
No, we can't.
You can or you cannot?
We cannot.
Yeah, I don't know why, because it's not even giving me an option to turn on my camera, which is weird.
Yeah, sorry, Christine. I think we might have disabled that before we started. My apologies.
That's okay. Can I still go ahead and speak?
Absolutely.
Yes, go ahead, Christine. Thank you.
Okay. I'm just curious now that the CDC has eased the guidelines of masking. Is there any consideration to lifting the masks as of today, as of tomorrow? It seems like all the schools around us, BVT, everyone went maskless or mask optional today. So just wondering if there's any consideration into dropping the masks as of today.
Thanks for the question, Christine. No, it is not something that we were considering. Part of our discussion at the last meeting was that we wanted these additional days in recognition of the fact that numbers tend to spike in the district and in our communities following a vacation where people are traveling. So out of an abundance of caution, we wanted to build in these extra days before moving to mask optional. So no, we are not going to readdress that at the meeting.
Not even at the high school level. I mean, I just don't understand. All this time you guys have said you're following the CDC guidelines. The CDC guidelines have now eased up on masking, but we're no longer going to follow the CDC guidelines. So I guess I'm just confused.
The CDC guidelines are one of the pieces of information that we've taken into consideration along the lines. The other piece is data that's been gathered through our community public health services and our school nurses. And that data has shown historically that there is a spike in COVID positive testing after a break. So that was why we chose to do the 5 days, and we're not opening that part of the policy tonight.
It's kind of a shame because the numbers continue to drastically drop, but you guys don't want to recognize that. So that's really all I had to say. It's a shame. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just Bridget wants to
speak. She's gonna wear her mask. That's okay.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Do I have to stand up?
You can come up to the table.
All right, so first I wanted to just say I'm here with a mask on just because I wasn't allowed to be otherwise, Anyways, despite the fact I'm sure a lot of people here are out in the public without masks, and I'm sure we can see that in lots of venues, but as far as the new CDC ruling, since you guys talked too much about CDC regulations, what is your take on the fact that they have said it's no longer required for public transportation, including school buses?
So that is something that we will be discussing tonight because that is a change in recommendation for policy. So we'll be talking about the school buses at later in the meeting tonight.
Okay, and what about unmasking kids 5 and under or pre-K?
Not something that we've considered at this point.
Yeah, so very interestingly, I know we keep talking about CDC so much, but I feel like even they have lost a lot of credibility. Interestingly enough, the new regulations for the, meeting milestones at 30 months, they just significantly lowered those milestones, which is very interesting to me. If you look at all the studies out there as far as how, not seeing from this part of the face down, how that affects linguistic development. So if you do the research yourself, like I have, you would actually know that besides just looking at CDC, if you do the international research out there, that having, just this part of your face showing to kids 5 and under actually does affect their linguistic development, how they connect emotionally to other people. So I just really hope that you take that into consideration and that it happens very quickly because it is affecting children to the degree that the CDC actually lowered their standards rather than coming out and saying, oh,
we were wrong and look what the data shows. They just instead lowered their standards, which is kind of disgusting. And I really hope that you guys take that into consideration when you make these rulings. I'm also just going to say on behalf of a lot of, probably 81% of the parents, that were very disappointed in the fact that a lot of Massachusetts schools today went maskless, right? And we chose, which, to your point, the school nurse actually at the school meeting last week pointed out that February break tends to be a little different than the November and the December break, right? So actually, we did not see a surge, a significant surge last year after the February break, but yet you decided to go off on your own, despite the fact, like I said last week on the school committee meeting, that kids continue to be almost 0% risk, and that is a fact, a truth. You can look it up yourself. And like I said, more likely to die in car accidents, in drownings, gun-related deaths, suicide and drug, all supersede COVID deaths in children. But yet, we still put kids in cars, right? I mean, nothing is 0% risk, and we cannot base policy on a 0% risk. That is just, so the fact that you guys superseded, you know, if you're going by the CDC, DESE, parents, the actual research and science out there for the extra week, it really makes 0 sense. To me, it just feels like control. And I feel like our kids have suffered enough, like I said, just with the emotional piece, with these young kids not seeing people's faces and how that's affected their development, and the science has proven that. I just feel like you're not making our children a priority, and that needs to start today. It should have started 2 years ago, but it breaks my heart as a mother and as a nurse that we are not following the real science and that our kids are suffering. My kids were so excited when the governor first said, February 28th, you get to go with no masks. And then you guys, you know, they were so excited when I told them the news. And then when I told, oh, just kidding, kids, it's another week. Why? Why? You think our kids haven't paid enough through this whole pandemic? This is heartbreaking as a parent. It's disgusting, and this needs to stop. This is the United States of America, right? We have freedoms. If you want to put a mask on your face, which these things, and even surgical masks do not filter out man. Or do the science, the research, and look beyond the CDC. It is just, it's very, very, very sad to me that, I know I'm talking a lot, but I'm speaking for this whole group of people that came here without a mask tonight just to quietly make a statement, all right? If you can sit there and look me in the eye and tell me that you guys haven't been out and about without a mask on, not just in your immediate family, you're lying, all right? 100%. So, but yeah, we want our kids to live by different rules, right? It's bananas, and the fact that you were so threatened by us coming in here with no mask tonight is just mind-boggling to me. I mean, it's policy, but you created that policy on just the basis of what? Your own, it doesn't even make sense. So thank you for listening. I think I made my point, yes.
Did you say 30 months?
You said 30 months was the CDC's recommendation now?
No, 30 months, they said 50 words.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Understood.
So they significantly lowered their standards.
All right, good.
Yeah, interestingly enough. Thank you very much for hearing me.
Additional comments from folks here? I know Sandy said there are some hands raised on Zoom.
To give everybody the opportunity to speak.
So we're going to Zoom. All right.
So I know Michael had his hand raised first, so Michael Cramer, if you could state your name and where you're from for the record, please.
Yeah, Michael Cramer, I live in Mendon. I'm floored that this committee is able to use an excuse for why we have to extend the masking date in one breath, when not only 14 days ago, our main people who we rely on apparently for our health information for our towns said specifically that February and April vacation were not vacations where we saw spikes. So I don't understand how this committee can in one breath say, we want to adjust the recommendation from DESE because we are using some sort of excuse here that says, oh, after breaks, we see a spike in cases when things were a lot worse than they are today. And then only 14 days previous, that was anti or completely opposite of the advice provided by the folks that you use as your main points of contact, as your main subject matter experts. So I just don't understand the logic behind the decision-making in any way, shape, or form. And it floors me to watch this committee do things like this. That's all I have for a comment.
Then we have Jim, who has his hand raised next. So Jim, if you could state your name and where you're from for the record, please.
Yeah, sure. My name's Jim Forkey. I'm from Upton. I've got twins in the preschool here, so the younger vulnerable group. I just want to point out, number one, the last school committee meeting, you guys solicited comments from the community, and a lot of people spoke out, but didn't have dialogue then. I'm not really sure why you guys are having dialogue now. But nonetheless, you are. I think that's great. I think it's not the right forum for it. I think a community forum is where you have the conversations. But nonetheless, and I don't envy your guys' position. I want to unmask. I would like to, but I would like to when it's safe. And I think it's safe, as the discussion happened last time, when there are no active cases in the school. You guys have a responsibility. There are vulnerable children, and God forbid, I hope it never happens. But if a child was to die because their classmates unmasked and they got COVID, you could be held liable. I mean, you have a duty to the community to protect these kids. And so whether that means that their classmates have to mask because there's a vulnerable, and then you open up SEL issues and targeted bullying because everyone has to mask because of an individual child. I mean, there's concerns and liabilities around it, and it creates a major struggle. I don't envy your position. You have a large portion of the population saying, unmask, 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 and then a small portion saying, wait, there's some vulnerable kids. We have to be careful here. It's very difficult. I don't envy your position. I'm sorry you're in it, but I do hope you make a decision that protects some of the vulnerable kids. Thanks.
Thanks, Jim.
See no more hands raised as we
All right, seeing no more hands, we're going to move on to the next item on our agenda tonight, which is superintendent and administrator comments. So, Dr.
Great, thank you. I'm going to swap a little bit of what I was going to talk about, just if you could get the presentation up on that transition, and I'll just give an update first on the principal search timeline. So I'll just give an update on the, and if you could pull up the presentation, that's mask transition, it says.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So with the principal search timeline, we know that Jan is retiring. We talked about that a couple meetings ago, and we have already started the process. We posted a few weeks ago. We've been getting a steady stream of candidates applying in the last couple of weeks. A bunch just came in right at the end of last week. A lot of really viable candidates, a number of candidates who are currently principals in other districts, and so it's looking like a really strong pool. Cheryl is taking the lead with the committee, so she started a focus groups, getting feedback, and this week the screening committee is meeting. Their first meeting is tomorrow, and part of that process is they look at the data from the focus groups and what the vision of our next principal would be for Clough Elementary School, and so they'll start to craft what they're looking for when they look at the applications, which they'll start doing on Thursday at the end of the week, and then from that point they'll reach out and start the interviews, or will be scheduled for next week for that first round of interviews. So as we go along, we'll keep you posted, but we also know that there are a number of postings that are out there as well. And so we want to move swiftly, but also do our due diligence, which is doing an excellent job of running the team through that process as we have with similar administrative openings we've had in the past. So I don't know if you have any questions regarding that.
My only question, is there any opportunity to do a principal hire, and you actually bring the person on May 1st, June 1st, and then transition through the closeout of the school year versus doing kind of a baton handoff?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that's not typical. Certainly, sometimes you could be in a circumstance where that could be possible. But because most of them are in sitting principalships, there's that transition of them finishing up the year.
Sure.
It's a good example of when Wendy was hired around a similar timeline, and there was that overlap. What's nice is you start doing that transition planning and training from the point of the hire all the way through the rest of the year.
Yep.
So we would still, with whoever it was, we would be working on that transition, even though they wouldn't necessarily be taking over. Yeah, great question. Any other questions related to that? Okay, all right. If you could pull up that presentation, that'd be great. I also have Leslie here behind me. I don't know if you want to come up too, just in case there's some questions. Thanks again for joining us. So we were asked at the last meeting to talk about just if there are any changes in protocols or what their transition will look like coming back from break and also heading into what we're going to be calling a mask flexible environment, because there are some circumstances where masks will still need to be, which I'll talk about, still need to be worn within health offices, et cetera, or if you're in your days coming back after COVID between this day 6 and 10 as well. So instead of saying optional, a lot of schools are using that language, which we like, so we're going to switch to that. So if we go to the next slide. So I'd like to focus on the good news. And the good news that we are heading into this transition, and I do understand and I really recognize that I hear the frustration that it didn't happen today. I'm trying to go glass half full, that it's allowing us this week to meet with students because it was right after break, and to meet with students and to communicate to families, to answer questions. So those couple extra days have been helpful from an administrative end, but I know that we're all going to be there, and I can't wait on Monday to be able to see the faces of all of our students for all the reasons that we talked about. And I care deeply about the health and well-being of our students and the social emotional needs as well. So I just want to acknowledge that. And I know, I'm feeling that as well. I'm in the kindergarten classroom today and I'm talking to the student and you can't quite hear and they can't see my face, and I just can't wait to see the faces. So it's good news. And we are going to see, and we're still continuing to see that trending down. Hopefully the surge we won't see, we know it won't be as much as what we had in the past, we anticipate, but there may be, with travel, there's a lot of travel that took place. But we're feeling confident that we'll be in a good place by Monday as well. So if you go to the next slide, I'm not going to go over every single protocol that we have, but just kind of want to reinforce what we're talking to the students about. And as you know, I know we had an overwhelming parent questions or, advocacy for removing it right away. We also had mixed reactions with a lot of the staff, and a lot of staff who were feeling uncomfortable or compromised. So what we want to do is make sure we're communicating out to everyone, like these are things that we're still keeping in place, the mitigation strategies and the layered approach that we know are helpful. So we still are following the DESE guidance and protocols that remain in place. They did not, I honestly had anticipated they were going to make some actual changes in the guidelines, and they didn't. They did update a couple frequently asked questions. And so what we're doing is putting together just any of the questions that came in from parents or from our staff. And we'll continue just to update and add the answers to those questions as people have them coming up this week. But they only updated about 3 in their DESE FAQs on February 22nd. Some of the main protocols that remain in place, we still have all the air filtration, and we have them right here in all the rooms. We're still going to be keeping with, unless it's really freezing weather like today, the windows open. We still have really excellent disinfecting and cleaning protocols that are in place, and hygiene protocols that we're advocating. What some of the transition work that the buildings are doing is putting up signage to really encourage it's switching from mask mandate to mask flexible, and we want to encourage people have the choice to wear it or to not wear it starting on Monday. And we want to make sure that we create a safe and supportive environment for whatever choice that people have. We also continue, so we've got some questions. Are you going to continue with your daily and weekly COVID data tracking? Yes, we do. So I get to do that every Wednesday. I submit it to DESE, and that's some of the data that is supporting this change as well. And I know we've also received questions, well, what happens if we start to see a surge or a spike in a certain area or grade level, et cetera? And one thing that we do, there's a hotline that we call at DESE. So if we ever saw, I mean, our nurses are right on top of it. We get notified, we're tracking it daily and weekly, and then we would contact DESE and local Board of Health, and then we determined if we had to make any changes in certain areas. We haven't had to do that, but we already have things in place that have been in place all along. Some good news, we know, and we talked about this at the last meeting, we have that increased access to vaccination, something we didn't have a couple years ago, and boosters, and our numbers keep trending upwards. As we know, not quite where we'd like it to be at our elementary level for our students, but we know that it keeps adding there and keeping our students safe. We also have provided a KN95 mask for our staff. A question came up for those staff, that might need an accommodation or might need more of those masks. That's something that we can provide as an accommodation if they request. We also have, which started, I don't know, did it start in January, February, the weekly opt-in testing. When was that? End of January. So we have the weekly opt-in testing for staff and students, and we are now quickly a well-oiled machine where we are getting those numbers in and getting the tests out for staffs and students every week so they can test, which is a way that people can monitor at home. And that was something we didn't have a while ago. We didn't have access to this many tests, and we have that now, which is great moving forward. And just want to note, we also continue with our symptomatic testing. So some questions were, what if someone shows up to school and then they're symptomatic? Same thing that we've been doing all along. They're sent to the nurse. If they're allowed to be tested, you call home, you can talk about that if we have questions, but it's the same thing that we talked about in the past, and we'll continue that. And as always, we just encourage people to stay home when they're sick. I think now everyone's pretty familiar with the symptoms that we have with COVID and can recognize it and know what it looks like. And if people are staying home when they're sick, then that's going to help us as well to stop the spread. Some of the other things that in the buildings I had shared with you, our working planning document. I don't want to read through everything on it since you have it. But each of the schools have started to communicate out what this transition looks like, what we're keeping in place, updating signage, refreshing the signage there and preventative measures, making sure our hand sanitizers are up and running, any of the things just to make sure we're in a good place this week. We have, for example, the high schools having meeting with students. I think is it tomorrow? Tomorrow, yeah. So they'll be meeting with the students tomorrow just to talk through everything. And I know that's happening at other grade levels as well, just so people understand and have a heads up. I know, even in my own son, today I'm trying to keep track of all the different districts that are on different timelines. Like, do you have a mask? Don't, I don't know, bring it. They'll tell you that, they're voting tonight. Like, I don't know what they're voting for in my district. So where I live, so that's been helpful because we're able to communicate out this week and answer the questions for parents and students as they're coming up. So key points of clarification: masks will still be required in school health offices and also days 6 through 10 after COVID. It's still, if you're unvaccinated, you're strongly encouraged to remain masked, as well as any immunocompromised individuals or if you have family members at home. Masks will continue to be available to staff and students. That was a question I got. Well, you still have masks available? Yep, we'll have them. They're usually in the front of the buildings or the main office. They have them in classrooms as well. So there's no lack of them being around if someone needed it. And we really want to have a focus on having a safe, supportive, and respectful environment it is a transition. It's been a couple of weeks. It's been a couple of years, right? Yeah, I wish it was just a couple of weeks. A couple of years that we've been in this, and we were talking earlier, even with the younger students, that this will be the first time that some students are going to have the opportunity to be in school without masks, which is really exciting, but maybe that's scary for some too. So we're going to be, talking to them and working through that this week as we are adjusting back from break. Breaking news, so when I made this presentation, I had to change it yesterday because yesterday we got that notification that the CDC we had always referred to the federal regulations that you had to wear them on the bus, masks on the bus. They lifted that, and we got the notification yesterday was sent out, and it was just in the commissioner's memo today. And so my recommendation that I sent out to you is that because it's within the 48 hours and it is in the policy, I recommend that you remove that language from the policy, and you could do that later on in the agenda. That way, it's just, you have that clarity going forward, and we can communicate that out as well. So it's really all good news. The next slide, please. So I mentioned updated signage that we'll have, updated FAQ documents. So we'll be getting that information out at the end of the week, to parents, just to communicate again so people are aware of the transition. Because I know when we first sent information out, it was a couple weeks ago now, we're meeting with students and check-ins with staff at the building level. And communicating to the families. So I think we have a pretty well-oiled plan to move forward. I recognize it's not at the timeline that everyone likes, but I really feel like we're in a good place and it's going to be happening very soon. So if you have questions for me or for Leslie here that may have come up, feel free to ask us, but we're feeling like we're in a pretty good place this week. Yeah.
I just had a question. So, I saw that the DESE guidelines hadn't changed. Does that mean social distancing in classrooms and lunches will still remain, or?
So so that's a great question. What we decided that would be the best approach, not to kind of throw everything at everyone all at once, is to do a phased approach. So next week you have the removal of the mask, and then particularly, at the high school, it's really cumbersome at the high school the way the model is for our breaks and the model for our lunches. And so we're going to start that transition, and they'll talk to you about that and that transition, but it's not going to be immediate. So we're overly cautious. We actually went above and beyond in lunches, more so than what the guidance had. So you're allowed to go above, which we did in our lunch areas. At the elementary, they decided, and at the elementary it's different. They have assigned seats. They're all facing forward, assigned seats. It's a whole, everyone knows where to go. Everyone's sitting in the same spot. It's great. They didn't feel the need right now to make a big change. Everyone's happy. It's great. It's working well. But we know at the high school, it's definitely an issue going to two different spaces. So we'll be doing that. And at the middle school, they're not making an immediate change right now, but they have different kind of spaces they have to work through, and then they'll work through that. But we have been, as we've been going, we always try to maximize, we know, right? The more space that you have, the safer we are, no matter what, especially if someone's got a cough and they're right there, or, something's happening. So we're still gonna encourage that, but we are, we also want that collaborative piece of learning and interactions that we've been seeing increasing over the course of this year as well. So that will continue to happen. And it looks a little different in each of the spaces at the schools. Some places you can spread out, and other places you can't, so you gotta be in a different configuration in classes. Great question.
So even after the transition, whatever happens in lunches, we will still maintain socially distant lunches and opportunities for those students returning from COVID on days 6 through 10?
Yeah, so one thing we were talking about is you can have sections and spaces. Also, we know not everyone. There are people who, like when we had the auditorium for a concert we had just so that, which was awesome, that fundraiser the other day. They had a whole section over here for those who wanted more spacing. So I think we're going to start creating these types of environments where you have places so people can feel comfortable or when they're returning. I don't know if you want to add anything to it, but that's something that's come up, is just continuing to provide those opportunities for space.
Right, I think that in the cafeteria, wherever students are just in the proximity, there's a distance of space between them because they're not sitting on top of one another, so they are spaced out. Students who are returning from COVID, that's their own personal health information, so that's not information that's shared. We'll know who those students are that are returning from COVID, and those students will have conversations with their parents about the masking that they need to do for days 6 through 10 when they return after COVID infection. We'll talk with the parents also about, if they would prefer to have a sit in an area, but I don't, the cafeteria spacing will still be, they're at least 3 feet apart in the cafeteria just by the logistics of the seats, so.
Yeah. We went above and beyond in our spacing in the cafeteria this past year.
Okay.
Any other questions? And as they come up, it's helpful because, we just add it to the FAQ too, and we can address it or clarify when we're talking to people.
I just appreciate the sensitivity to the fact that while there are many students who will be very excited on Monday, taking mask off will also be anxiety provoking for a lot of students. So just being mindful of that, and I know like the principals will be having conversations, and that's great. And also for the teachers, comments about like being excited to see smiling faces. I understand the sentiment behind it, but for kids who are more nervous about taking their masks off, just be mindful of those things.
I just want to thank you for building that plan. It makes us all good, sure.
I have to thank the principals because they built it and I just deliver it. They did. I didn't do any of it, so they did a great job pulling that together and having that and working through it at the building level. So I think the couple days of communication around it and we'll be good. We'll be good to go.
Cool.
Yeah. Thanks. Okay. So I'm going to ask if Cheryl can come on up, and she's going to give a couple updates for us too.
Hi, thanks for having me. I have some more good news, and it has everything to do with academics. So I'm really excited to tell you a little bit about, first of all, the Math Acceleration Academy that happened last week. We had over 40 students enrolled in a program that I'm just very proud and pleased how thoughtfully it was put together. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about it because it's really cool. The whole program was effectively designed to not just provide math intervention, but also to provide it in a way that students would be able to engage with each other, get some activity and exercise while thinking about math, and also think about some of the social emotional skills that really become barriers to academics for some students, with the team coming together and designing this program with the intention of really trying to help kids think about how to create growth mindsets that enable them to move forward together in their academics. The program, unfortunately, had the last day snowed out, but even there, I was so pleased because the teachers put together these activities for kids to be able to do at home. And I visited a couple times and I saw activities happening with archery, with coloring, with people cutting things out and moving shapes around. There was orientation that was planned, and so, essentially like using compasses and stuff like that. So there were a whole host of activities they put together. We're looking forward to doing it again in April, where we'll host up to about 100 students during that program, and we'll look forward to having round 2 of this. So then I wanted to share with you not the budget.
You really want us to present that, Sam.
Something I like better than the budget.
You need it?
The budget, mask, music.
Do you have the? I'm sharing it with you right now.
Sorry about that. I was having to hear.
Apologies. This kid should show up. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you.
So I get to talk to you a little bit about formative assessments. And I wanted to just take a minute to kind of explain the concept for you all and for anyone who's listening, because this is something that we do as educators all the time, whether it's through homework, which is a form of a formative assessment, or an exit ticket in a class to see how kids might have understood the lesson. Educators build formative assessment into their work every day. And we in Mendon-Upton have the privilege of also having a more systematic approach to formative assessments through a platform called iReady, which we've been working with for a couple of years. And I feel like this year, it's really not only been able to show us how our kids are progressing, but also has been able to be used as a tool for educators. And so I wanted to take a minute, not to explain everything to you. I was told, you know, let's keep it brief. But hopefully, if I'm successful, you'll have all these questions and you'll want me to come back, and I can share some more with you at some other point.
I may have looked at my presentation from last year where I had 40 slides, and I said, don't do that. So she did a much better job. You got the intro last year, and she'll dive right in.
That's right, lucky 7.
Yeah.
So iReady is the platform that we use, and iReady is not just a platform that provides systematic formative assessments, but it also provides interventions for students. And so on an aside, we're using this platform and we're working with our educators to help them understand this as another tool in their arsenal. So what we've been able to do this year is we've implemented iReady, which is correlated to the MCAS, and also provides data in a way that correlates to the standards in the MCAS, right? So teachers can use it to evaluate how their students are doing and in some ways predict how they'll do in standardized tests at the end of the year. This platform is used in grades K through 8 at Clough Memorial and Misco Hill. We took benchmark assessments in the fall. And those benchmark assessments then are compared to diagnostic assessments that happened in early February, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to share this with you now. Those assessments, the results are in, and we've been able to do some analyses with how well the kids are growing. And just so that you know too, one of the things that I thought was amazing is there's an incredible take-up rate in terms of who's participating in this. So this is a district-wide program that is being used district-wide in every classroom, 95 to 99% of the students taking it. And assessments, the assessments themselves take about 45 to 60 minutes per test to take. So they're not taking tons and tons of instructional time. And in these 2 data dips, I think you'll see some of why we think this data is really valuable. So I wanted to just make sure you saw kind of what we see in terms of some of this. And I liked this color kind of line because it really shows the differences and where students start from the beginning of the year. In any typical classroom, you've got a situation where you've got students that are starting at different places in the year, and every teacher in this district is addressing the differentiation that's needed in that classroom. So if you don't mind, Sam, click again. What this shows is that there are some students that actually enter in the fall at mid or above grade level, according to the assessments, again. And others that enter at what we consider early on grade level. So anything in the green, if it's 2nd grade, for example, those students are coming on at a place where the assessment would essentially evaluate that they're on grade level already, okay? That's before 2nd grade even happens. So now we go to the next one, and the yellow is evaluated as 1 grade level below, which is exactly where kids should be when they enter 2nd grade in this case. And then can I use the assessments to identify students that may need some extra interventions. that are more than one grade level below. So I assembled a couple of slides, thanks Sam, that will just show you some of the improvements effectively that we've seen from the fall administration to the winter administration. And you can see that the fall is underneath, with the winter being kind of more pronounced, so you can see it better. And what I'd like you to notice is just the transition in the colors, basically. And you can see that at all of the schools, those green bars are really stretching, and it's just half the year we're seeing this progress. And so you can see it in math at all three of the schools. You can, and also one other thing to point out is, you know, there are smaller and smaller numbers of students that need intervention. So I'll talk about this a little when we talk about growth. Can you flip it again? Oops, too fast.
Sorry.
What, can you go, did you already flip reading and math? Yeah. Oh, okay, good. All right, so you can look at the numbers a little bit more because you have the presentations to take a look at the percentages and stuff like that. But my real point with these slides is to show you these differences, basically, and just to kind of raise awareness about that. This next slide, I think, is the one, though, that you really want to hear about. So I'll spend a little bit more time with this. So I say to myself, so, okay, this looks good. All the lines are growing and they're moving in the right direction. But how do I know if that's really good, right? And so what I assembled here is some comparisons that might give us a window to that world, basically. So what you have on the left is you have a diagram that essentially explains what all of the schools across Massachusetts, how they're doing on the iReady diagnostic with an N of like almost 150,000 kids, okay? And both in reading and math, you can see that the percentages for, I'll just look at the on-grade level percentages combined, are about 47 for reading and 25 for math combined, okay? What I did in the middle is I assembled Mendon-Upton's statistics. And Mendon-Upton's right now at the same time period compared to the rest of Massachusetts, we're at 59% in reading on grade level and 52% in math. And so that's good, but then you might say, okay, but that, you know, Massachusetts, you know, there's a whole bunch of districts that we should be comparing ourselves to, okay. So let's take a look then at this other diagram, which I think is actually like what a lot of people want to hear, okay? And these are, oh wait, back up one sec, sorry, Sam. So the other one is the graphs on the right, which basically are national norms from 1819, okay? That's the point. This is pre-pandemic, and the question that's raised is, how are our kids doing having weathered this pandemic? And can we see, how do we know if they're okay now and if they're performing where they should be after these last 2 years? Well, you can see that pre-pandemic numbers are actually even less than where we're at in Mendon-Upton right now. And that's pre-pandemic in their national norms and so in national numbers. So of course there are schools in there that maybe aren't direct comparisons, but when I saw this, I just wanted to bring it to you. Our kids are doing okay, and they're growing in this really hard environment right now. And that's a big tribute to a lot of work that folks are doing in the classrooms and to the fact that they're resilient through all this. And it's really good news. So now we'll switch to the last slide, really. This is really where I hope that you'll be like, oh, I want to hear more about this, because I'm really going to not go over it very well. But what the platform does also is it provides growth measures, and it provides them for every single student individually. And so the growth measures will identify where typical growth is for the year and where stretch growth is for the year. And then teachers themselves can go in and they can look at their individual students and they can see how they're growing. And if they're not growing at the rate that they should be, they can make adjustments for that. And the platform actually provides them ways to do that, because it will analyze where they're growing and where they're not. And it will provide them with personalized instruction and practice in the areas that they're not growing. And so what we've been doing through the course of this year is we've been training teachers how to analyze the data and how to access some of this personalized instruction and all these techniques called data chats and data conferences with students so they can set their own goals for some of this stuff. So that's all I'll say about this. You'll have to ask me later if you want more information. And I'll stop and see if you have any questions.
That was just fantastic. This is what we've been waiting for a long, long time. When you said you had
Yeah,
already.
it was about March last year when I found my amazing 40 slide presentation. No, this is so much better. But yeah, it was about a year ago when we came forward with a little bit less than that. So,
I'm sorry.
No, Sean.
I wouldn't want to tax you further on crunching more information, but the Massachusetts numbers from 1819, I'd love to see those as well.
Okay.
Because I know that Massachusetts was very far ahead of the average state in the nation. So
Yep.
it would be good. It'd be a good comparison, I think, just to see how the kids are doing inside of the Massachusetts school system. As a transition. Sorry.
No, okay. Sure, I guess I was asked on the same slide, on slide 6, is, do we have enough historical data, and maybe, this is what Dr. Cohen was just saying, so we have last year's at this time. Do we have 2 years ago at this time? So we have one more
don't,
data
yeah,
point.
so that was the problem last year. That was the first time we were
Yeah.
doing it in the middle of a pandemic, right? So
Right.
we didn't have anything we could compare it to prior. So this is the first time that we can, do that kind of comparison.
So we
go
should be able
back
to
last-
compare then, like the middle bars on this slide.
To last year.
The same time last year.
Ish.
Okay,
And one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about the take-up rate is because that's important, right? And so last year, the first year that it was administered, it was not taken by at nearly the 95 to 99%. This year, everyone's doing it, and it's a part of what we're doing here, and that's a natural transition. So I think moving forward, absolutely, you'll be able to make those year-to-year comparisons and see that.
And then do parents see this data?
No, and that they don't just see that data. There are parent reports and information that teachers can generate or share with parents. So I know it's part of the conversations that take place, at conferences or, parents ask. So there is that ability, but there isn't like a login for parents to go and see it.
Would we ever start pushing, I think with our report card systems, would we ever start pushing this data into that system for parents to access? Power School.
Into Power School.
Well, and it will be, so I can imagine as a first step, really, it being like a tool to use with conferences and stuff like that, with parent conferences, to be able to show parents how students are progressing through the course of the year. Also, I think that that there are embedded reports that we could create a path for access. So I'm hoping that in the next couple of months, I'll be able to meet with some PTG organizations and kind of do a little bit of this with folks where they can ask questions about the platform, what their kids are experiencing, what kind of data the system is producing.
I would say the most important thing you need the context behind the data.
Yeah, you don't want some people into a tizzy.
Which, if you say, oh, yeah, but she just explained it really well, right? This is, it's fine if you are starting one grade below, because that's where many people are gonna be when you start. But if you, as a parent, like, wait, they're behind, you get this sense of fear that's there. Right. What's helpful is with the parent reports, and also there's embedded drop down of tools of explanations that you can actually get into. Here's the specific, this is the power. It's not so much that score, I don't think. It's here's the specific skill that your child still needs to work on or is excelling on. And you're in those teacher conversations, you can drill down and talk about that. That's the power, I think, in the layers of iReady and what it has to support teachers and parents.
So this is fundamentally different than the MCAS reports that parents do get, where these reports are more granular in their skills assessment. Is that correct?
That's more of a summative, so it's this one point in time, end of the year, it says here are these standards, it hits some of them, not all. what's nice about this is you have that ongoing work with it. And they have embedded tools that teachers can work on some of the skills with it and then see some of the growth as well.
But the
And
testing is different than MCAS.
It's different, but it's
different.
designed to effectively correlate
Okay,
to the
okay.
same standards. And so the practice is that the analysis can raise, what Maureen's saying is the analysis can raise where students are progressing and where they're not progressing, and then provide practice targeted to those areas where students aren't progressing.
The embedded tools, is that, so I think there's different packages with iReady, correct? So are we, so what we purchased includes those embedded tools, and so how are those being used? Do students have access to them if like the teacher identifies that this is an area for growth? Like can they send the student in to work on things?
Yeah, there are two, feel free to jump in too. She's living it a little bit more than I am now, but when I'm referring to it, there's teacher tools. So it'll say, Maureen Cohen, she needs to work on these standards, I'm struggling, and then you click in, it says, but specifically you can work on this letter formation, specifically, here's a lesson that you can provide. So when I say those embedded tools, it will give targeted lessons for teachers. That comes with the whole package no matter what. And that's part of the diagnostic. We also right now have the personalized instruction platform through some of our like ESSER grants and grants that we've had. And so that's something that maybe you can speak a little bit more to, but that's where the students, it'll say kind of where they're at, or a teacher could assign something and it could give, some additional lessons. I don't
You
know
did
if
a nice job explaining it.
Okay.
And that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And so yes, to what you just said, it is the type of thing where a teacher could say, go practice this. Like, while I'm working with these students over here, here's what you're working on for a little bit, and then I'll come talk to your group. And if every student is logged on, they're getting the practice that's designed to meet their needs. Okay, so that's the personalized instruction piece. Could also be used at home too. And what we're doing, I think, really thoughtfully is bringing this to educators through professional development and doing it in a way where they're able to understand the metrics, the analysis, what they're learning through this, and we're getting to this personalized instruction. So I imagine you'll see that happening more and more and more as folks get more used to it.
So last question for me. So if you look at the elementary schools on slide 4 and 5, the fall to now, the students that are behind dropped by 70 to 80% in all 4 categories, both schools, math, and but in the middle school, we actually didn't have any improvement. In one area, we actually got a little bit worse, it looks like, or I guess we stayed the same at 25%. I guess 2-part question to you. Is there any action plans for specifically going to address, because you're basically approaching 0 at the middle school, elementary schools, which is great, but it looks like in the middle school, we still have a good chunk of kids that are probably struggling a little bit more. So I guess question 1, and then question 2 is when you look at slide 6, it almost, when you look at the averages, I know you're kind of blending all grades together, but it's kind of interesting to look at just our middle school to see if we've got something that's falling behind state and nationally in the middle school, given, because I think if you blend all the schools together, the elementary schools are just naturally going to raise up the average, and so you might not see if you're missing it in the middle school.
Yeah, so I think the observations are really good ones, and I think what we can do with this tool is do just what you just said, and that's the plan, is look at those areas that don't seem to be moving and drill down and see who are those kids, and why do we think that, they might not be moving, and we're here at mid-year able to do that, that's part of this good news, right? That's what a formative assessment does. It allows us to essentially regroup and say, what do we need to do next to help these kids learn? So without that tool, we wouldn't see that, right? So that's an important thing and a good thing.
And there's one more testing time. Did we do it fall, winter, spring? Is that?
That's right.
So I think it would be really interesting next year to be looking at, for example, where the 4th graders are ending up at the end of the year versus the 5th graders at the beginning of the year. Because I think we're often talking about some of these anomalies that seem to happen with test scores in middle school. And I think that would be really interesting information, like what is happening with that transition between the buildings. And I wonder if that's the kind of information that could ever be used to do like summer enrichment academies or something like that to help with that transition for some of the more vulnerable students.
Just one comment about historically speaking, to your point, on middle school, by the 10th grade MCAS, the high school has recovered all that and more. It's incredible. So I don't know what is going on with our school district, that we've got sort of kids don't score as well in middle school, and then when they get into 10th grade, all of a sudden they just rock it. So, it's that traditionally what we've seen for 10 years.
I guess that brings up, though, a good question, which is, what are we going to do? Because we kind of laid off the MCAS through the pandemic years in terms of performance tracking and student performance. I think that'd be a good topic to address maybe in an upcoming meeting where we understand, like, how are we assessing student performance at the various different levels? Are we still going with the MCAS approach, or are we, that provides a certain level of data? This provides more, I'll call it, real-time data, because you have multiple points through the year to assess, versus MCAS is just kind of one and done. But at the same point in time, the school looks at us at MCAS. The state looks at us usually utilizing the MCAS, because not every school in the state has this, for example.
Yeah, what we try to do, the more, what's been great about something like iReady, it's added a really reliable assessment into our toolkit to look at the data and to drill down. And so we're still looking at MCAS, just so you know, at the buildings, they go through it, they do the same, the whole routine, and they dive into it and try to make adjustments and meet at grade levels. In addition, now you have this layer in there as well. And at the elementary, a benefit of the elementary has been SD Math data. Has really rocketed us forward. We have Lexia tool as well. So there's some other electronic tools that have been helping as well in some of this process too. But it's something we still always continue to look at. And what's been really beneficial, I have to say, about the additional PD days this year, now we have more time for the PD that we need to do this data analysis work and work with our teams. And we've been able to do it. And the one time or this time of year throughout the year has been, I'm seeing a lot of growth just in the skill set of our staff in using it too.
No, that's great. I think it's just important for us to understand, how are we defining student performance these days? Because we've kind of shied away from the data over the last 2 years as it relates to MCAS, because the state hasn't necessarily, we haven't implemented, we haven't kind of made it test optional, we've done a lot of things, but as we roll through this year and next year, that's going to change. In addition, if I look at this chart right here specifically, I think, Eric, to what you said, which I thought would be a great idea, is to look at this chart as it relates to each grade level and understanding what each grade level looks like, so you're having accessibility to understand how we're performing in those grade levels and what's there. Because at a general level, to your point, you're saying that there's been no impact through the pandemic to our students in terms of the performance that we've had, at least in this regard. But I think if you dig down into it, you might find that different at different grade levels.
And you do see differences. And so, like, my presentation worked. See, already you want to have more questions answered.
And now you're asking for the 40 slides. So that's fine. We have it, and they're looking at it.
But you said it's not shared with parents. Only through it's only shared through conferences. So I guess the question I would ask is, if I look at students or parents looking to digest this, how do we utilize, how do we put something in place? Probably more so as the students get older, because they can digest it better than younger students. I don't know. I guess I'm just asking the question. Because MCAS is kind of straightforward.
I think that's part of the data chats too. She's talking about the data chat. So how you bring the data forward, you meet with the student, and you're able to kind of, especially when they are older, and be able to work through that.
Great. Just had a comment. Do you think we could compare like the emotional health and those test results to how to these test results. I know because we've done some through the years at the high school. I'm not sure if we do those at the lower level schools, but I think that could be interesting.
Also it's a good follow-up. So last year we did iReady presentation with panorama data, which is why it was 40 slides. So I said we had budget tonight, but we need to get this update, right? So we definitely will.
We'll have you back.
We'll have her back,
Okay.
and we'll focus solely on that. But we do have that data as well, which is why we're tracking it every year and then working, and which has been a huge part of our PD. On our PD, Cheryl's done just a phenomenal job of working with the teachers at all the buildings on how to drill down the panorama data.
Well, and I mean, can I just say too, that's a great question that you raised, because that's all like what we were talking about, and how, you know, those things are so intricately related in terms of, you know, progress. In the future, I know that some of these platforms, either by themselves, will be set up to be able to match the academic to the social emotional data, so that educators can kind of get a sense and be able to kind of disaggregate some of that stuff together. Thanks.
Thank you. So moving on to the next item on our agenda, we have school committee subcommittee updates. Have any subcommittees to update us?
Yeah, we haven't really met. I'll just mention that the budget subcommittee scheduled for meetings. We have the open budget hearing on March 14th. And I believe we have one more
Scheduled for Monday.
Yeah, scheduled. So again, if anybody wants to participate in those, they can. Those are open meetings. So are you going to? You're talking to me, Jim. Yeah, we have a whole, okay, so we got a whole like 175 slide show.
Can we go back to Cheryl's 7-slide presentation?
That's it. Jay's got 5 minutes at the end of the meeting.
We'll move on to new business. We have a Model UN out-of-state field trip approval that needs to be addressed.
Yep, so just pretty simple. We told Brian he didn't have to come here tonight. So we have, Michael's talking about the Model United Nations. I'm a former Model UN advisor, so I get very excited about Model UN, and actually used to take my students on out-of-state field trips to Connecticut and Yukon and BU and everything too. But so he has, as an advisor, he's been looking to find one that wasn't virtual, so it's good that we have one that we can come up to. But because the one that he found for an overnight was in Woodstock, Connecticut, per our policy, it's out of state, so it just requires motion and approval. He submitted all the information for that, looks great, and it's an awesome opportunity. The more they can go and prepare to be global citizens and leaders. I don't know how familiar you are with Model UN, we're seeing a lot of nodding. You're basically taking on the role of what we're seeing right here live in the world, but you're doing it as a student. It's an amazing opportunity. So I'm so thrilled to hear that we have these opportunities for them.
Excellent. So we need a motion to approve the out-of-state field trip.
Motion to approve the Model UN trip to Woodstock, Connecticut on April 30th.
Second. Yeah, lots of seconds there.
Lots of seconds. And all in favor? Aye. Okay. Motion is approved. All right. Budget proposal is next.
Okay, now you can display it, Sam. You're so ready.
People are left on Zoom for the budget presentation, that's what I want to know.
A few.
5. Oh, good.
All right. Thanks for having us tonight to give a more in-depth overview. We gave some budget estimates, so some of similar information you'll hear from the last meeting. But if you could go to the next slide. Thank you. I know those of you on the budget subcommittee have seen this graphic, but I think it's helpful just to communicate out to the community and to people that it's a really complex process, a long process that goes into place when you're developing the budget. And so right now we're in the phase of the review, refine, present, January to February timeline, the initial budget presentations, still in the prioritization process and finishing that up. But this started all the way back in September and October when we had our initial meetings with the budget subcommittee to plan out some of the goals for the year, and started to meet myself and Jay. We met with all the principals and department heads over the course of October and November and December, and then met numerous times with the leadership team around budget priorities and input into our goals for the year, which leads us to today's presentation. So if we go to the next slide. So since it's a numbers kind of presentation, I wanted to start with our numbers of our students as of the October 1. These are 2,141 students in our schools, our 4 schools. And as you can see, we're starting to look differently than we have years before. We have a number, I've talked about a number of students whose English is not their first language. I just met a lovely new student this morning. It was her first day, and she just came here from Brazil. I met her in kindergarten this morning. So we have a wide range of students in our population, and but the numbers don't speak to what we're all about here in Mendon-Upton. So if you go to the next slide, always try to emphasize the importance of our students and their experience. When we talk about what do we measure, a big part of me, I know we have to always look at achievement and our outcomes, right? But one piece for me too is the day-to-day experiences that our students are having in our classrooms every day, on the fields, in music, in drama, and all the extracurricular opportunities that we have for them, and that we're sustaining that and growing that and meeting their needs. So this just captures a little bit from some of our previous presentations of what's taking place every day in our district. I also, in starting this, kind of started to go back, right? And I know we talked about maybe looking back to go forward. Heading back to 2018 is when we had our strategic plan of Inspire. It seems like about 20 years ago. And in some ways it feels like yesterday. It's weird, because I think I've blocked out some of these things along this path. But if you look through, we were heading in a great direction, and then we hit in that March 2020 when we had the closing the buildings, moving to remote learning, and in between, and I definitely blocked out some things in the last couple of years, but even in the last couple of weeks, what we have managed from switching from contact tracing to staff shortages and test kits arriving en masse and the DESI protocols that change every day and new variants, it's been a lot. It's been a lot, but I'm not here to focus on that. But along the way, we've hit some hurdles and some detours. So if we go to the next slide, like I say, I'm more of a half glass full kind of person. I also started to look through all of our strategic plans and our outcomes and what we've been doing and the progress we've made despite being in a pandemic, despite being in really difficult circumstances along the way. And we've done some awesome things. So I just wanted, and I ran out of room. I was trying to fit it in, so that's why it's a little messy, because I kept thinking, oh, well, yeah, then we have civic action projects and that, and then we added, financial literacy with that grant and inspired learning days that we'll have at the high school. We just had it at elementary and middle. We started back in 2018 with our PBL training, and now finally, we were accepted into network for that. That's heading into next year. We've really reinforced a lot of our social emotional needs with the return to school transition programs for our students 5 through 12. Thank you to the budget investments last year. And we just were talking about our benchmark assessments. We didn't have that a number of years ago. And that's really been a game changer for us in looking at assessments. And I know you've always heard me giving all of the updates over the years related to the high quality instructional materials, but not all districts really have made those kind of investments, but we have. And it's making an impact. And Bridges in particular for math this year is making a huge impact in ST Math with our students, and you just saw the data to prove it. Our tech department is amazing. As you know, we went from 1-to-1 with basically at the secondary level and moved to 1-to-1 with all students, all staff, in order to get remote and hybrid learning up and running. And now we're having meetings in hybrid fashion, and I don't know what this contraption is that Sam manages here, but you know, these are all a result of the efforts of the last couple of years. Let's go to the next slide. So I'm not going to list all of these. What I did, as you saw in all the departmental meetings and the building presentations, basically what I tried to do is pull the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that were presented by everyone and bring it here so we can still continue to communicate out kind of where we stand in the district. We're like, what's the state of the district today? And when we're always focused on continuous improvement, what are some areas that we need to grow? And we have a talented and dedicated staff. We have an amazing strategic plan, and we live by our plan. Not every district does, but we do. It comes into our conversations every single day. And we've been really committed to achievement and growth and also SEL. You've heard a lot about some of the opportunities that are coming up. We know we need to grow our community partnerships. We're hoping to do it through things like Inspired Learning, but also with the new grant opportunity with the Innovation Pathways at the high school. We have other partnerships that we can capitalize on. Additionally, we're really meeting with our municipal partners, and it's been great to try to collaborate and see how we can share services. And I think there's room for growth in the future to see how we can do that. So that's been an opportunity as well. We've talked about, as a leadership team, sharing resources and personnel across elementary and thinking, you know, how can we share more? And also, maybe there are ways in the future that we can figure out if we can get schedules to align to have more sharing across middle and high school. And so we know there's opportunities there. Some of the weaknesses that you have heard that were presented in some of the presentations were, we know we need more electives. We want more humanities offerings. We're talking about technology at the high school and the need for that in computer science. We've had limited world language wellness at the middle school. It's not quite where we'd like it to be. In some pockets, we have increasing class sizes, and we always want to keep an eye on that. One thing that came up across everyone's, which relates to the budget, but everyone's presentation, was the fact that this budget uncertainty that we've had over the last number of years really has led to staff attrition. When we ended up having some people, had to give them slips last year, and then I made the calls. It was my first week on the job, and opportunity for me to bring everybody back. Not everyone decided to come back because it was so stressful for them. And some of our principals brought that up, but I think it's something that we want to keep in mind as we're developing the budget moving forward and communicating out, is that I really like to see if there's a way that we can build that long-term plan for more certainty and understanding and communication. We know that there's limited funding and revenue in the towns to support us too much beyond our fixed costs, and that's something that will always be an external threat in the towns that we're in right now. And we've already heard about a lot of the aging facilities and infrastructure and the reduced state aid that our towns will be getting compared to other towns. So if you go to the next one, I think I did actually read them all, sorry. He's like, don't read them all. I'm like, no, I won't, and I think I did. I can't help myself. All right, I won't read this, but just to refocus on the strategic goals, there's a fourth one as well that relates to communication budget. But here, you know, and you've heard it through our school improvement plans, our district goals, we're really focused on understanding our students, supporting them, and then engaging them. And so that has been our focus, that's been our framework, and that guides our conversations about what we need and what we prioritize when we're talking about our budget heading into next year as well. Next slide. And so when we're developing this budget this year, these are the kind of conversations that we had. And I had each of the principals and departments prioritize kind of what's a level 1, a level 2, level 3. And that way we can at what we're asking for and what's included in the budget. So first of all, we always want to maintain our level of services. We want to maintain our class sizes, our programs, services that are currently being provided to our students. So that's the base level that we're starting at. And so something like a class size that is beyond what we would find to be acceptable ends up being something that, you know, will be a high priority for us in putting something forward. And then we have our critical needs and our mandated positions. And so those are the critical needs as we emerge from the pandemic. I think we did address a fair amount of that in the budget last year, although we didn't address all of it that we had put forward because we had to scale back, but we've made some progress there. And we also have mandated requirements. That could be students on IEPs. It's when we have to add another paraprofessional, or we have an out-of-district placement and costs, or one thing that I brought up is our English language learners. We do not have enough staff that meets the number of English language learners we have. We are not in compliance right now. So I'll speak to that a little bit after. And then next, we want to go to strategic investments. And that's the piece where I think we stand out compared to some other districts. And I won't name other districts, but we're very focused on our strategic plan and growth and meeting the needs of what people in our community want for their students and children, and to prepare them so they are ready to head out into the world for some of you in a couple of years here, and making sure that you're well prepared and have the experiences that you need. If we take that piece away, then we really aren't the Mendon-Upton district that we have been for a number of years. And so then it leads us to, it's really important, and we're trying to partner with our towns and also leverage grants and other sources of funds as much as we can in that partnership in order to support and develop the budget. So we go to the next slide. So when I was trying to think visually of like the stake in the ground or the flag that we're planting, here's the images that I came up to talk about some of the conversations that we had as a leadership team and in our budget development. We all agree that optimal class size is a high priority for us. It allows for that one-on-one support that we need, particularly at the elementary levels. It would be helpful at the middle school levels as well if we could have smaller groups and smaller class sizes. Student safety and support, I'll talk a little bit about this later, but that we have noted this to be a high priority. We know and have talked about the mental health needs of our students, particularly coming out of the pandemic or through the pandemic, and that we have faced different behaviors and just challenges really with our students and supporting them in the last years, and that remains a priority and will be probably for some time. And robust offerings is really important, that we're still looking forward in providing the types of offerings that we should be providing to give our students a competitive advantage. All right, so in breaking up our proposed staffing, I'm going to give a quick overview of this. I did at the end of this presentation give some of the background information related to some of these positions. We're more than happy to answer questions, but these positions are positions that you saw in all of the previous presentations that people brought forward. So in order to maintain level services and optimal class size, we're requesting a grade 4 teacher at Clough and a 0.8 grade 5 teacher at the middle school. And for critical, I'm going to talk about the bottom row after. So the 2 rows above are in the budget fully, okay? Critical needs for student safety, we're requesting an elementary school assistant principal, 1 that would be shared between the 2 elementary schools. This is something that has been requested over the last 10 years since we used to have deans of students, And right now, we've been reaching, and I can answer questions later, but we're reaching a critical point right now where we need more administrative support at our elementary level. When Chris came forward, he talked about the athletic trainer. Right now, it's part-time. It's only a small investment to move that from part-time to full-time in order to meet the safety needs of all of our student athletes. It's critical needs related to mandated positions. I know we've talked about the library media specialists, and so we're looking to redesign the library media space here at the high school. I've had a number of meetings related to that, but to have a redesigned role for this as well for the library media specialists. As you know, I think you know at this point, after all the years of talking about it, this is part of our NEASC accreditation. When Jen and Nick came forward, they talked about the need for the wellness teacher. In all of these electives, we have 2 PE teachers, 2 band, 2 music, the only area, 2 art, etc. The only area that we only had 1 is wellness, which is significantly impacting our ability to provide really a full curriculum for them, because they only are rotating through for a term, because Sarah is amazing, as you know, because she came and presented to us about some of the work that she does with students. She's unable to really do other than she can touch upon some of the content with students, but she only sees them for like 18 days in a year to give them health curriculum. And we know that that's a critical need, particularly at the middle school age as well. Strategic improvement, that robust offering category. You had presentations that came forward. We had students earlier this year, and we also have presentations by the high school where they're talking about this new pathway that we have received a lot of funding for through Project Lead the Way, and we're looking at innovation pathways, but to build out a computer science programming 9 through 12, which is something that the math department has been working and developing on. And so in order to do that and to build it out beyond what we have right now and to meet the needs of more students would require that addition of that teacher. And related to that, and it's not quite staffing, but just wanted to put it in there to know that it's part of the budget request that's related, or stipends for esports. You heard about the introduction to esports as well, and also robotics clubs as well. So on the bottom, we've been working with Upton on tech support staff for shared cost service with Upton. It's been great, developing and working on that. And I think there's, like I said, there's room for growth as well. We have been meeting with the chiefs of police in both towns regarding school resource officers. This is cost neutral, but just wanted to put it on here related to safety. In Mendon, we have not had a full-time officer. Single is amazing, but because of scheduling hasn't been there full-time. So we're meeting with them and trying to get full-time for next year. So just wanted to put it on your radar that we're working on that. The English language teacher has been put into the ESSER grant to be covered by the grant for the next couple of years, because that was something that easily qualified underneath that. And then we'd be looking to possibly relocate the library media aid position, so we wouldn't be adding. Right now we have that position at the high school, but if we fill the high school, then we can allocate to the middle school, which also helps with our scheduling and the ability to reduce some of the class sizes and offer an open library media center, which has been essentially closed except for some parent volunteers in the last year. So that's a quick overview of those. On the next slide, I'm not going through all of this, but what we wanted to do, yeah, right. But one thing we wanted to do is just kind of pull out to give you a sense of, we shared the line items, we talk about different budget pieces that make up the budget, if people were wondering, but in the previous category, it talks about things that we have addressed, maybe this year or like last year. So we have the instructional coach, that's been huge. It would have been great if we could have 2, because then you have 1 in each building and it wouldn't be shared, but just having 1 shared across the 2 has been really a game changer for them. So that's just one area, and having a reading specialist have been supportive as well, something that we didn't have in the past. We've added different sports like esports. We've talked at length about many of the facility needs that we've had and some things that we've been working on and how we maintain. I outlined the PD here for you, student support services, some of those positions. And so then we head into FY23, some of the areas that are part of the budget. And then future planning, just wanted to point out some of the future thinking that we're now trying to add into this budget process, where we're saying, okay, this is what we know can fit into this budget this year, but we're still looking forward, and we're going to start planning out a 2, 3, 4-year plan for this continuous improvement cycle across all of the areas. Go to the next slide. Sorry, I keep clicking here and thinking I'm doing something. So our initial budget proposal to present tonight, and I know we have time to work through this between now and the open budget hearing, is for $39,909,817. This is approximately a 2.1% increase over last year's request. So I'm going to hand it over to Jay, who's going to quickly go over some of the stuff that we did last time, and then kind of dive into some of the key drivers and factors in our budget development and some of the threats that still remain right now.
All right, hi everybody. Hope you're doing well tonight. I'll be very quick. Okay, I'm done. This one you've seen before. This is just the state budget that was released. Again, of note here is the reduction in regional transportation. I do expect that to change as the House and Senate works on their budget, but as of now, it's still what it is, which is about $5 million less than it was this current year. If you go on to the next one, so this is our state aid. This has not changed since we talked, whenever that was, 2-3 weeks ago. We're still looking basically at level funding from the state. There's no change there. I don't anticipate, with the exception of transportation, that any of this is going to change, although the charter tuition thing does always change as we move through the process, but it kind of gets offset by the tuition charge as well, so the net never really moves a whole lot. On the district side, we're looking to add $100,000 more than this current year from E&D. We did certify, as I think I've told you, at $1.8 million. I think a $700,000 appropriation is reasonable with that kind of balance sitting there. That's the main increase on the district side. We have increased a little bit on the Medicaid reimbursement based on what we've historically gotten the last couple of years, and we've added interest in as well, just because we do earn interest on the money we have in the bank. How much money do we have in the bank right now?
Yeah.
It's around 12 million.
How much interest did we earn last year?
Around 12,000. Upton local assessment. Was going to start with that because just a little bit of background. The question I always get is, why is one town's increase so much more than the others? In this case, it's Upton, not Mendon. The way the budget is allocated is you take out all of the fixed costs, and all that's left is set up by the enrollment proportion. Minimum contribution is not based on enrollment proportion. It's based on different things that they categorize in the town: property value, income levels, where they are in relation to target share. So you start off with Upton having an increase of 562,000 and Mendon having an increase of 238,000 at MLC. That's what drives one town higher than the other, because the balance is then split by enrollment, which is basically, 55-45 approximately, actually 56-44. But that's the reason why. So for Upton, we're looking at a net increase of about 540,000. Take out the debt service, which is a little bit of a reduction. They have a net of about 520,000 on the Upton side. On the Mendon side, they're looking at a net increase in the operational side of $180,000. Take out the debt, and it's down to about 164,400. So there's a fairly big differential there, and that's just all based on where the minimum contributions have been set. So if you go to the total again, we get back to the beginning. We're looking at an $819,000 increase, about 2.1%. Now, the rest of these slides that we go through are other sources of revenue that we have that support the budget. School choice is one. We appropriated $920,000 this year. We're looking to appropriate $800,000 next year, which is a little bit less. At this point, I'm still comfortable with that amount. Circuit breaker, I think I've explained, we're a year ahead. So what we take in this year in our reimbursement is what we are able to appropriate next year. So it's a fixed number. That $896,000 is what we're supposed to get this year in revenue. It turns out that in June, when they give us our last distribution, it goes up. that then goes into the budget for next year because you can only hold it for 1 year. You can't carry it beyond that. Grants. These 5 grants are entitlement grants that we get every single year. You can see that there's a slight reduction. It's because I really don't know what we're going to get in these grants, and we won't have these numbers until probably August. But it's possible we'll get level funded, could be a little bit more, could be a little bit less. But those are the basic revenues. Those 5 grants, the 240 grant goes to pay for paraprofessional salaries. Same thing with the 262 grant, it pays for 1 paraprofessional in preschool. Title I is basically academic support for low-income students, based on low-income students. It's only Memorial and MISCO that qualify for that. It could change for next year, but that's what it is this year. Title IIA is professional development. That's been pretty steady in that $32,000 to $34,000 range over the last probably 7 or 8 years.
That also pays for our mentoring as well.
Correct.
So mentor stipends as well as PD. And sometimes, like our mandated training PD modules that we do is paid out of that as well because it falls under PD.
Title IV has been $10,000 for the last 5 years in a row. This particular year, I believe we used it to pay for Thrively. I don't know what we'll use it for next year, but we expect there'll be $10,000. The next 4 grants are the rest of these grants are all pandemic related. ESSER 2 and ESSER 3, what I've done is just split it into 2 years. If you add the 2 together, that's what the total is for each of these grants. ESSER 3 actually carries into FY25, so we probably won't spend a full $234,000 this year or next year because we'll want to save some for FY24. ESSER 2, I did the same thing with that, but it ends in FY23. The summer school ones and the after school ones are this year grants. I have no idea if they're going to be offered next year. If they are, great. If they aren't, we won't be doing the Math Academy that Cheryl talked about now.
So can I ask a question? ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 funds are already allocated, correct?
How do you mean allocated?
Meaning you have.
Yes, yes,
correct?
yes.
I mean, they've already been fine. They're
Yes.
not ongoing expenditures.
Yes, yes.
And they both have been in
Yes.
full?
Yeah, ESSER 3 got improved
Yeah,
finally.
just in January, actually.
Great.
Yeah. I would say the only thing that I'd mention that is an ongoing is that EL position. So we're using it to help now, but we would have to pick that up in a couple of
Right,
years.
eventually.
But that's the only one that we put in there.
You know, it's in ESSER 3, I believe, and, you know, quite possibly what we want to do is phase it in as far as what we get on the operational side to the grant side. Same thing with the next 4 grants. They're all this year grants that may or may not continue. I did have a list. It's over there if you want to know some of the details of what they go for. The 252 grant is a special ed grant specifically being used for contract and services to try and get us caught up on some of the things we fell behind during remote learning. As far as assessments and evaluations, the early childhood one, same kind of thing, but it's a lot less money. The math acceleration is paying for the program that Cheryl's talked about previously. This federal emergency connectivity fund is the iPad thing that Dave and Joe Lakeview came and presented. That's basically buying us a bunch of iPads for for 7 through 12. We've got all those iPads in, so they're being distributed right now. So that's the revenue side. On the expenditure side, key drivers. Salaries for current employees are up $983,000. That's a 2.5% COLA plus step and lane changes. The new positions that Maureen highlighted a few minutes ago, $427,000 for those. Health insurance right now, based on an 8% increase, is $259,000. I'm still not sure where that's going to end up, but that's what's in the budget right now. Worcester retirement, we already know the bill. It's a 9.6% increase. Transportation, we know the bill. It's an $81,000 increase. The big things that's saving us for next year is our out-of-district tuition and transportation is down a little over $500,000. We have less students, therefore less transportation costs. And we have a grant, a 240 grant that we're going to be able to carry over from this year into next year. We can reduce expenses by utilizing that money, which we have to use in FY23. We can't carry it beyond that. It gets us to a net increase of a little over $1 million, but it does leave us currently with $182,000 shortfall.
So what expenses are?
It's going to go against paraprofessional salaries.
So that's why the paraprofessionals.
Right. in
So the
FY '23.
paraprofessional salaries that's in the sheet actually is.
Correct.
That piece.
Correct. Right.
We gotta find a better way of showing this.
Right.
And it's not.
Right, but the reports that come out of the software, the numbers are what the numbers
I
are.
understand that, we just gotta find a better way to do that, we should be able to do that.
All right, expenditures, this particular pie chart is something when you generally see other districts report, and we've done the same thing for several years, these are the state function codes that we have to report our expenditures by. And it's broken out by various categories. 1,000 is administration, 2,000 instruction, 3,000 pupil services, 4,000 buildings and operations, 5,000 fixed charges, 8,000 debt retirement, 9,000 programs with other schools. Those are the percentages that break out based on how the state requires us to keep our books. So again, we've got about $182,000 shortfall currently. There's two things that could hopefully offset that. One is if we can get health insurance to come in at less than 8%, every 1% is a $45,000 reduction. I do anticipate transportation reimbursement to increase, but I don't have a number for that. So those are two things that we still have as variables. Health insurance, I hope we're going to have some resolution on that in the next couple of weeks, but I don't know that for sure. The transportation reimbursement, obviously, we're not going to know about that until probably June, sometime when the governor or when the House and Senate agrees on something. One of the things that I am very concerned about, more than I ever have been in any other year, is our non-resident vocational tuition costs. As you know, we have students at Norfolk Aggie. We currently have 11 kids there, 2 are graduating, which means we're going to have 9 left. I got a letter last Thursday from Norfolk Aggie telling us that based on their current standards, we have 10 students that will get accepted to that student. I've only budgeted for 4 extra above the 9 that we have. So that puts me short quite a bit if they actually accept them all. But you have to keep in mind that when people apply to Norfolk Aggie, when parents and their children apply, they typically are applying to every vocational school they can in hopes of getting in one. Doesn't mean they're all going to go to Norfolk Aggie. More than likely, all those students also apply to BVT, maybe even Tri-County, maybe even keep any other option that they think they want to have. But it is a threat that, to me, seems more serious than it has in the past. We have 2 applications, one to Keith and one, Keith is the vocational school in Framingham. Tri-County is the one in Franklin. We have 2 applications there. Students can only attend those schools if the program they want is not offered at BVT. So that could happen, but I don't know. Again, I think they're just covering their bases with the applications. The killer is if we actually had a student go to Tri-County or Keith, we could be looking at $50,000 to $60,000 a year just to transport the student back and forth.
So, Jay, if you summed up this entire page, I know this goes in as it goes out as, what's the worst case? Everyone gets accepted to everywhere.
Everyone gets accepted to everywhere, then we need to come up with probably, I would say, $150,000 to $200,000, which means that kind of reduction in, more than likely, you'd start to look at the positions you proposed as new positions and say, well, we probably can't do all of those right now. That would be the worst case. The biggest problem I have with this isn't so much the threat involved. We're not going to get a final number on this till probably late in July. That was typically when we get the final enrollment from these schools. By then, you've already certified the budget. We've already planned for the year. So it kind of puts us at a real, at a standstill. I do have a contact at Norfolk Aggie that's been very helpful, and I can generally find out. I'm not going to know in 2 weeks, but I can generally find out, by May or June where they're really going with acceptances. Because a lot of people pull out their applications and stuff. But that's the worst case.
So are these pass-through costs to the town? What I mean by that is I realize they exist in our from Mendon, one's from.
No, they're just part of our operational costs. Technically, Norfolk Aggie should be billing the towns directly and not us, but their rules say they send it to the superintendent of the schools at the district they come from, so they come to us. Right now, the split is 50-50. It's, I think we have 5 from Mendon and 4 from Upton. We have 11 now, so it's 6 and 5.
I'm sorry, Jay, could you just finish what you were saying there? You said, what is Norfolk Aggie's rule?
Norfolk State, the state says you are to bill non-resident vocational tuition to the superintendent of the school district the students are coming from.
So that's
The
the
Mendon-Upton.
that's the out of district placement.
No, non-resident vocational. The non-resident vocational has nothing to do with out-of-district
Okay.
special ed or anything
Okay.
else. This is specifically vocational school.
So our resident vocational school is DVT.
Yeah, so
And so, but they can apply, they don't have a program they can apply to
yeah, so it's the
another one.
same thing. What I use the word district, you're using non-resident, I understand.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you, so they're supposed to go through the town?
That's what the state will say as well, because each town gets Chapter 70 money for kids that go to Norfolk Ag. It's not a lot of money. It's like $12,000, $15,000. It might be up to like 30. I don't know. Do you know what Mendon-Upton's is this year?
It's not a lot.
Yeah, it's
It's like $12,000.
But I've been told in the past, because to Phil's point, I think where he's going with this is, why don't we take the tuition for these students and charge it right back to the towns as part of an assessment? We could probably do that, but I think the towns are gonna come back and say, well, we told you we could give you, for example, I'll use Upton's number, $540,000. You need us to pick up $200,000 in tuition, so now figure it's $340,000, because we only have so much money. It's not like we have extra money to spend. So one way or the other, it balances out and it's gonna hit the same thing. If we had a situation where we had 10 kids from one town and one from another, then I could see that maybe we want to try to approach this a little bit differently. We've never had this situation. It's always been pretty much evenly split, similar to the enrollment split.
Well, I'm trying to reconcile the fact that we have a completely different system for charging for different vocational schools.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying, Sean, like,
It's
how
'cause
can
it's
Norfolk
non-resident.
Aggie charge $24,000 a student?
Yeah.
I keep saying we should become a non-resident vocational here. We can start. I'm pretty sure we'll get a lot of students in.
There was a period several years ago where Dr. Fitzpatrick was going to try to develop an agricultural program at BVT, and the purpose of it was to try and offset some of the Norfolk Aggie stuff. It never got approved at a town level amongst its 13 towns, so it just never went any further. So, but this is one thing, like I said, that I'm more concerned about than I have been in previous years. Other variables we're still waiting for, health insurance, like I said, that's still one, the non-resident one, the House and Senate budgets. I don't expect Chapter 70 to change, but I do think transportation is going to go up. We still could have people that choose to retire or some movement. Enrollment shifts in kindergarten, SI registration, all that's still in the works right now. But again, you could have a family move in July and with 12 kids, and you're going to have to figure out a place to put them. So
Hey, this presentation is a big improvement on all the years I've witnessed. This is really good.
I appreciate that.
It has a lot of the different trade-offs in it. It has a lot of the information about where the expenditures are, the unexpected. This is really good. Now, I think you said something though that I'm gonna have to go back through after the meeting and figure out, which I didn't quite pick up on.
Well, to Phil's point, what he's asking for, is there a way to somehow put into the spreadsheet the grant money in those line items?
Yeah.
Which I probably could create a spreadsheet that shows it that way.
Well, the grant,
They are not.
when you say 39, so there's specific line items. But there are items that original choice for such a circuit breaker for the
right.
And I that we the split was in Upton, and that some of the be that. I'm not arguing that point, but I think we have to bring
That's really what I'm saying.
Right, and what it involved in doing that is redesigning a spreadsheet that includes those things within the operational, like the spreadsheet that you guys got, the line item budget.
Yeah.
But the software can't produce it that way because the accounts are required to be separate based on the state.
But I mean, there are some things that fees basically add back.
Right. Well, we've done that on our funding sheets where we put them, and that's what I tried to do here is list all those grants beyond.
Yeah, but I think.
Right.
Some items have their own.
Yep.
So I just. Is what those items are.
That's what I'm trying to accomplish with that.
Right,
So we can
no, I
pick out
understand.
Individual line items.
Year like last year. Expected budget, I because. Here and how do we think we're going to do and are they, are there pulling.
Well, you do have on the report you got the year to date as well, this year's budget and year to date where we are in this current year.
Totally get it. The question I have
Correct.
is that a good? That's what I'm.
Well, I think if you look at some of the maintenance lines, you're gonna see that most of them are at or exceeding their budget today, and we still have 4 months to go.
Then we
So
have some
I'm
other
not
line items
optimistic.
that are literally nothing.
Yeah, I'm not optimistic that we're gonna finish anywhere near like we did last year. Let me put it to you that way at this point.
I wouldn't expect. We had a club.
Yeah.
I think we've got to get our hands around as we look at this. Have a significant. Need to trend that appropriately. Allow us now to look at this in an ongoing basis, not exactly.
I know you
Well,
do.
we have our budget subcommittee meeting on Monday, so perhaps that's
can
a
run that
topic
again.
that we can kind
I'll
of
send it to
dive
you.
in
Great.
at that meeting,
I get a monthly heat map, essentially, is what I have. So you can compare against the
No,
last
it's-
5 years.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I can give you my projection as to what. Last 2 years has gone up significantly.
Yeah. Well, it went up last year because of last year, how we finished.
It
That's
went
what,
up the year before too.
yeah, but not like it did last year. From 21, we finished really well. 20 was nowhere near.
So
It
19 to 20.
was 1.6.
700,000.
No, it was 1.6 in 21, in 20, and it was 1.8 in 21.
It went up $200,000, $700,000 the year before. That's what. I'm just saying, those are items you got to look. Pieces. That fits into it.
These are just, you want to do this one?
Yeah, I can do this one. So we just have the timeline of the dates that we have. Mendon reached out to ask if we could present basically this presentation prior to our budget hearing. So that's scheduled, just got scheduled for March 9th at 6:30. So you're all, Jay and I will go, but you're all welcome to come. So I'll give you that information. I believe it was 6:30. I don't know if Upton, Kelly, we can talk after if they would want us to do a similar thing. If so, we're more than happy to do so, but we can talk about it maybe after the meeting.
You said 7:30 at the town hall?
6:30
at the town hall upstairs.
Is that a school, or is it a selectmen meeting or a?
Selectmen
FinCom?
FinCom joint.
Yeah.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. So
I believe
they
it's well.
just reached out, so I just scheduled that.
Upton's.
Okay, sounds great. It'll be basically this presentation, so we're trying to make.
Add another 30 or 40
We
slides
can,
if you need to.
Whatever you want.
So I guess the one.
Fine.
I'm happy to add that in.
Just saying
No,
that.
I was trying, yeah.
But
no.
I mean, it's a question you're
Yeah,
gonna get,
no,
and it's
yeah.
gonna be a question we
Yeah.
get.
Yeah, we have it,
Blah,
we
blah,
have it. Everyone did that. I left some of the things out of the group
I just think a
presentations that they
summarization.
had.
Right. And beyond that, I think the rest of the slides are just backup data, which we're not gonna go through
Just wanted to
tonight.
add additional information, so you had it and you could look at it.
That I meant when I said, I think this is a great presentation. We could do some tweaking to make it better.
Good. Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Jen.
Yep. Did I go over my 5 minutes?
I think we did all right. I mean, it was supposed to be about a half an hour.
Your time for slide was very efficient.
Didn't mean in there.
Thanks, Jack.
There you go.
Okay. So, still have a couple things we need to get through tonight, folks. Sorry, Kelly, keep your pen out. It must be. So we're moving on to other matters not anticipated by the committee within 48 hours of the posted meeting. We wanted to talk about the CDC removal of the regulations to require masks on K-12 school buses. Maureen, did you want to talk more about this, or?
Yeah, sure. I can just give the highlight, and I linked it in there. Or no, I put the policy in there for you. But we got the notification yesterday that that we've been referring to the federal regulations for wearing masks. That is now, as of February 25th. There's no federal regulation. So I recommend that your option is you can remove it as of that March 7th to have everything be effective on that March 7th. You could choose to do it prior and remove it from the buses tomorrow. It's whatever your choice, but it needs to be removed. We don't want to have that in there as we're entering next week. And it could just be making the motion as stated, just to remove that one sentence from that policy, waive the first reading of it, and we'd be good to go. We'll get it up there and communicate out before next week.
Does it make sense to just remove the line and then leave the rest of the policy as is? Everything starts Monday.
So who's gonna make a motion?
I will make a motion. From face coverings policy, the line by federal public health order, all students and staff are required to wear a mask on school buses will be removed.
So, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Motion's approved. Next item on the agenda is correspondence, and I just wanted to take this opportunity to say that we've received a lot of correspondence over the last 2 weeks in regards to the changes to the face covering policy. We've done our best to respond to all of the communication that we've received. And I do want to say thank you to the Mendon-Upton communities and the staff of our schools. For the most part, the correspondence has been really respectful and passionately advocating for their kids. And I appreciate the fact that we've been able to have conversations about this. So did want to mention that. Other than that, future agenda items. Don't have anything. So I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Motion to adjourn is passed. We're adjourned at 9:33.